Hey everyone, I'm Alex, and today at Big Out Books we are talking about Valentine's Day, which is that magical marketing holiday where you're supposed to celebrate love and romance. And if you have a significant other, you are supposed to prove your love by showering them with lavish gifts or parading them out in public so you can show off how happy you are. And if you don't have a significant other, then this day is basically designed to make you feel terrible about yourself and your life choices. So it's really no surprise that there are a ton of people out there who just want nothing to do with Valentine's Day, and I am one of those people. So today I'm going to talk about 10 books that I think make a mockery of love and relationships. These are books that have very twisted relationships at the heart of them. They're depressing, they are dark, and they are books that you will never find quotations from on the inside of a Hallmark card. So let's get started. Alright, so I'm going to start off with a Finnish novel. This is called Troll, a Love Story, and it's by Johanna Sinisalo. So in Scandinavia, trolls are a big part of the mythology. A lot of people believe that trolls are like these mythical creatures that roam around in the woods. But in this novel, a guy comes home after a night of drinking and finds a troll in the dumpster of his apartment building, and he decides to take the troll home and keep it as a pet. So at first this is kind of about what it's like having a wild creature living with you, and we learn more about this guy's complicated dating life. But things take a very strange turn when the guy starts having romantic and sexual feelings for the troll. So yeah, this is probably the weirdest relationship I have ever read about. Up next, we have Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte, which I think is mistakenly marketed as a romantic novel sometimes. Even my copy, the back has a quote saying, "Whatever our souls are made of, his and mine are the same," which if you had no context for the book, you might think like, that's a nice quote and this must be a nice love story, when really it is anything but. This is a book about passion, and it is about unhealthy obsession. These are about people who are like too into each other to even function. If Heathcliff and Kathy are your relationship goals, you need to get your head examined. Its dark and stormy plot makes for an exciting read, but it's certainly not a romantic one. So don't be fooled into thinking that this is some charming novel when it is kind of the opposite. This is about terrible people doing terrible things to each other in a terrible place. While we're on the topic of the Brontes, I had to include Wide Sargasso Sea by Jean Rey. I love this book for taking on and challenging a classic text and forcing readers to see it in a new light. So Wide Sargasso Sea basically provides a backstory for Bertha, who is Mr. Rochester's first wife, or the mad woman in the attic. And she brings up all of the sexist, racist, and colonialist issues that are kind of buried in the text of Jane Eyre. They never really come to light. So she will really challenge our perception of Mr. Rochester, and he does not come across great in this book. In fact, so whenever I read Jane Eyre now, I can't even support the romance between Jane and Mr. Rochester because everything is so problematic now after reading Wide Sargasso Sea. So what's more anti-Valentine's Day than smashing love? Up next is Tess of the Durbervilles by Thomas Hardy. This is a great book to read if you like being depressed on Valentine's Day, because it is not a happy book. It is about a young girl whose whole life falls apart after she gets raped. So in the society that Tess lives in, a woman's worth is completely determined by her purity. And since Tess is no longer a virgin, she's seen as damaged goods, even though it was through no fault of her own. So this goes on to have some terrible consequences in her future. Thomas Hardy uses this novel to challenge the restrictive social norms of his time. He tries to bring to our attention that mankind, we're basically just animals, and we have biological needs, and having sex is pretty normal and shouldn't be that big of a deal. But we overcomplicate things by living in society with all of these morals and rules that make natural behavior seem unnatural all of a sudden. So if you are interested in challenging societal norms as well, and if you like to read about love gone wrong, Tess of the Durbervilles is a great pick. Next up is Notes on a Scandal. It is about a teacher named Sheba who has an affair with one of her students, which is pretty messed up in the first place, but it adds an extra layer because it is also about a fellow teacher and friend named Barbara who is just really obsessed with Sheba's life. So on one hand you've got this like inappropriate relationship, but even weirder is like this twisted obsession between Barbara and Sheba. While we're on the subject of relationships that are unnatural and inappropriate, we have to add Lolita to the list. There is nothing less romantic than reading about a creepy old guy who is forcing himself on a young girl. The subject matter in this book is really gross and uncomfortable, and what's worse is that he is this charismatic narrator that is trying to manipulate the writer into seeing things from his perspective and for trying to make us think that his behavior is okay. So this book is not an easy read, but the prose is really incredible, and it is about one of the most twisted relationships you'll ever read about. For some nonfiction, I chose The Lives of the Great Composers. This book is a fun look at the crazy lives of classical music composers. It gives a lot of interesting personal details. So some of the marriages described in this book are very strange. For example, there's Robert and Clara Schumann, who are kind of like a musical power couple, but also young Brahms was kind of had a close friendship with Clara, so people aren't really sure if they were having an affair together behind Robert Schumann's back. We have Wagner, who ran off with Liszt's daughter, and we also have the unhappy story of Tchaikovsky, who was gay and unable to come out, and he ended up marrying a woman who turned out to be a nymphomaniac, so that had a bad ending. If you're interested in learning more about classical composers and their crazy marriages and love affairs, this is definitely a good place to get started. Next up is Revolutionary Road by Richard Yates. This is about a couple whose life looks perfect on the surface. They look like they're living the American dream. They have 2 kids, they live in the suburbs, they're very attractive, but they are also deeply troubled and they are deeply unhappy and their relationship is very messed up. So this is one of those books that you read and you think, I never want to get married. So if you're single on Valentine's Day, this will definitely make you feel better about that because relationships don't come across as looking very good in this book. Also filing under the Marriages Gone Wrong category, this is the Windup Bird Chronicle by Haruki Murakami, and this book really made me realize that you can never truly know someone else, which is problematic when you're married to someone. So, this is someone that you spend your whole life with and you think that you know better than anyone else, but still deep down you just can never know someone's deep inner thoughts. You can never know what goes on in someone's subconscious. You don't know everyone's memories. There are all these important parts about our personalities that just another person can never have access to. So that makes you kind of scary when you look over at the person that you're sleeping beside and you're just kind of like, who is that? And last on the list, this is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, which I just finished yesterday, and is easily the least romantic book I've ever read. It is horrifying. This is a book about a dystopian future where women have their agency basically stripped away, and a certain class of women are turned into handmaidens, where they are sent to the houses of powerful men, and they're there just basically to conceive a baby. So there's no romance there in being kept as a sex slave, basically, where you're only valued for your potential fertility. So if you're depressed this year about Valentine's Day, this novel can maybe cheer you up in that life isn't as bad as it is in this horrible dystopia. I mean, women have more choices than they do in this book. You know, you can choose to celebrate or not celebrate Valentine's Day, or you can choose to have a significant other or choose to stay single, and that women are valued for more than their fertility or their baby making ability. So, I mean, this is a depressing book, but maybe that's the cheerful takeaway from it. So that was my list of 10 books I would recommend for people who hate Valentine's Day. Let me know in the comments if you also hate Valentine's Day and if you have any suggestions of books that are about messed up relationships. Thanks for watching, and let's all try to make it through Valentine's Day without getting sick.